what thing I wanted to correct here, there's a difference between separation and iddah. The iddah starts from the time that there is talaq.
Exactly.
Once the man says it's talaq, like this, that's it, we're divorced, that's the time when the iddah starts. But separation is totally different. It's not iddah.
But during that time, according to these verses, what does Allah say do? Based on the verses that you've heard so far, what does Allah say to do during that time?
It's already divorced.
Okay.
When you don't have no relationship, I read in the Quran.
Okay, but hold on a minute. Let's don't jump the gun here, all right? Because I don't want you to get mixed up by other people's opinions and stuff like that. Let's stay with this. We're going to cover this, and if we don't, I want you to write it down, and I want to make sure you get the right answer. If I pronounce to my wife, talaq, what has Allah told me to do?
Stay in the same place, away from the people.
Stay in the same place. Is that called separation, folks?
No.
So is there anything unclear about that?
No.
Okay, so I didn't say that, okay? So I'm supposed to stay in the same place, and I'm supposed to try to reconcile. Now, did anybody understand me to say anything different than that? I'm sorry, brother, I can't hear with that going on. You're supposed to stay in the same place unless there is a danger to the person.
What's a prescribed period that you...
I'm going to get there. I'm trying to get there now, but I've got so many questions that I can't get there. But I'm going to show you from the Quran, because that's the most powerful place to learn anything. But does everybody understand what I'm talking about here? Okay? I'm talking about talaq. That's the title of this slide. Okay, that's not this thing that we have in the Western world where we file for separation, and then after a year of separation, we go into mediation. I'm not talking about American law here. I'm trying to teach you what Allah and His Messenger says. How it's supposed to work and what you're supposed to do. Is everybody with me? Have I miscommunicated anything? Okay. All right, thank you.
It's not going to talk.
So, do we know what the prescribed period is in the interest of? Once I have said to my wife, there's another interest other than reconciliation, and this is hypothetical, by the way. Once one has said to their wife, I want to divorce you, and I'm also going to show you later on in the class that it's not only the man that can divorce, because a lot of people think that. I'm going to break that down for you. Just be patient with me. But I want to break it down every step of the way. Okay? The prescribed period is in the interest of what? Proving paternity, for one thing. Okay? Everything should be done to strengthen the social and spiritual aspect of marriage. The parties are to think seriously, in a mood of piety, keeping the fear of Allah in their mind. What I see in separation, or what's talaq has been announced in many cases, and I want to stay with the subject, so I'm going to say talaq. I'm not going to even go there, because that's not what we're talking about. Is that it's about selfishness anyway, because it's about what I want. I'm not getting what I want anymore. There's no fear of Allah in most of what I see. And what most comes to my office is not fear of Allah most of the time. As a matter of fact, I had a man in my office who said, my wife doesn't need to be in a therapist. I don't need a therapist. She just needs to obey me. And this is an ignorant man. This is a man that has no clue about the Islam, what Islam teaches, and no clue about what the Quran teaches, and no clue about relationships. Make sure you find out what your partner, when you're in the kickball stage, believes about relationships before you make it a relationship. And that's some of what we've been talking about. Islam treats married women as a full juristic personality in every sense of the term. A married woman has a right in the married state to a house or apartment of her own. And the house or apartment implies the reasonable expenses for its upkeep and for her own and her children's maintenance. It's like people want to see how much they can punish. People are not doing this, folks. This is obligatory, not only in the married state, but during iddah. So if I decide, or a man decides, you know what, I want to divorce this woman, things are not working. Based on the verses so far, I'm supposed to try to reconcile, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm also supposed to maintain her.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you see it? Did I make it up? That's supposed to be a no. I didn't make this up, folks. This is obligatory, not only in the married state, but during the iddah. And I'm going to show you from the Quran again. I'm going to give you another proof.
Yes.
Which is necessarily a most trying period for the woman. During this period, she must not only not be turned out, but it is not decent for her to leave of her own accord, unless there is violence. At least the chances of reconciliation should be diminished. A reconciliation is possible and is indeed recommended at every stage, except where there is abuse. You never want to put a couple together where there has been a history of abuse until that person has had significant therapy. And you actually have a professional, and you with that professional believes that you might be safe. The first serious difference between the parties are to be submitted to a family council of which both sides are represented. And that comes from Surah 4 and verse 35. But remember when I asked the question, how many people here believe that they have a just mother-in-law or father-in-law? Not one person raised their hand. So I would advise you to look up.
I think that maybe your mother-in-law can be just, but maybe in your case, maybe they can't be just. Maybe they're a just person. When it comes to their own child,
we're talking in this context, though, Basil. I agree with you. But we are talking about a situation that's going to affect the community. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect your reputation. It's going to affect your job. How many days of work are missed because of divorce? I miss days of work because I get subpoenaed. And I have to go to the courthouse and fill out a whole lot of paperwork and do a whole lot of stuff to say that, hey, I've got confidentiality here. But do you know how long it takes to go to the courthouse and to park at the courthouse and to do a letter and to file it and then to go to the post office and stand in line and send a certified letter?
4 hours job.
It's a half a day. So the first serious difference between the parties are to be submitted to a family council in which both sides are represented. Divorce is not to be pronounced with when mutual physical attraction is at an end. In other words, when the person is least attractive or sort of repulsive at that moment because of something that's happened. Because what are you doing? If you just you're angry and you say, I want talak, do you mean it?
No.
Is it really what you want? Are you fearing Allah? Because Allah said, don't get angry. Don't go near to angry. If you get angry, sit down. If that doesn't work, lay down. If that doesn't work, make your ablution. If that doesn't work, pray. Does it say curse your wife out or curse your husband out and throw some things in the house? That's not what I see. When it is pronounced, there should be a period of probationary waiting. Dower has to be paid, and due provisions have to be made for many things on equitable terms. Every facility has to be given for reconciliation till the last moment. And impediments are provided against hasty impulse leading to rupture. Let's look at Surah 2 and verse 228. Divorced women shall wait concerning themselves for 3 monthly periods. Nor is it lawful for them to hide what Allah has created in their wombs if they have faith in Allah in the last days. So the wife says, I want out of here, I want a divorce, I ain't going to let him know I'm pregnant. It's haram.
For the wife to want a divorce while she knows she's pregnant, the husband is not.
Now she can want a divorce, but she can't hide that she's pregnant. That's what the verse says. She can't hide that she's pregnant. And their husbands have the better right to take them back in that waiting period. So let's say, here's the example, Ibrahim. Somebody has done talaq. 2 weeks or so from now, they realize they're expecting. She's not supposed to hide that. Well, by the way, I'm expecting. Then Allah says that take them back in that period. How much is the period?
9 months.
3 periods. Now, that's usually about 90 days. But you can't say 90 days because not everybody does it every 30 days. Some people do it every 27 days. But that's the measuring stick. There's some variance there. So their husbands have the right to take them back in that period if they wish for reconciliation. And women shall have rights similar to the rights against them according to what is equitable. What is the word here?
Equitable.
Equitable. But men have a degree of advantage over them, and Allah is exalted in power. Why? This verse is often taken out of context. Do you know what the advantage is? It's economic. To this day, in this country, women earn 77 cents to every dollar that a man earns. That's what this is talking about. Do you know I've had men in my office that try to convince me that this means they can take advantage of the women? They say, oh, no, Allah said it right here. So let me make sure everybody knows that's not what it means. Everything here is about equality and equitability, and now somebody wants to take a phrase from the last line and say, I can take advantage. I'll come back to this, but the Quran says men are the maintainers of women because Allah has given them more strength. That, most scholars say that more strength is that they are more economically sound. What also makes them economically sound is that if a woman gets pregnant, it's sort of hard for her to make money. Particularly if she's going to breastfeed for 2 years. If she's sick every day for 9 months of pregnancy, it's sort of hard to make money. Islam tries to maintain the marriage state as far as possible, especially where children are concerned, but it is against the restriction of the liberty of men and women in such vitally important matters as love and family life. It will check hasty action as far as possible and leave the door to reconciliation open at many stages. Let me say again, not in the case of abuse and domestic violence. We had a situation in Kissimmee. This fortunately was not a Muslim situation, although we've had a number of Muslims murdered in these situations. When the wife of this particular man didn't obey him, he took out his revolver and said, "We need to have a little meeting." And while he was talking to her, he would spin the revolver on the table and say, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" That's abuse, folks. That's mental abuse. Even often, divorce, a suggestion of reconciliation is made, subject to certain precautions. And these precautions you're going to see in verse 229. Against thoughtless actions. Sometimes when we get angry, we can't even remember what we said. Has anybody, well, I don't want you to show hands on that because we don't want to advertise our sins. But I imagine that there's some people in here that have been so angry before they did not remember what they said. Or what they even did. They actually try to replay what happened and they can't. A period of waiting for 3 monthly menstrual cycles is prescribed in order to see if the marriage conditionally dissolved is likely to result in issue, meaning a child. This is not necessary when the divorced woman is a virgin, because there's no issue. So, in other words, let's say that a woman who has well past menopause, does she have actually the same situation? Not exactly, because she can't get pregnant. Should she try to resolve the marriage? Yes, there's a principle here. Now, what about a situation where 2 people get married and the marriage is never consummated? And this happens. I know you're like, oh, your eyes are this big, like, what? Yeah, it happens. I know of numerous cases. I've actually had people in my office that got married and it never was consummated. That nullifies that marriage in Islam. It is really as if it never happened. Your question, brother?
That was actually one of my questions, is that like why, so that if it's never consummated, then there's really no top.
That's exactly right. Yes, brother?
This happens in Saudi Arabia a lot. They get married, but they don't consummate maybe after a year or so. And when they get a divorce, then why is she called a divorcee? Because they never consummated the marriage.
Well, from the Islamic perspective, you really, it's not a divorce, because it wasn't done by talaq. It was done because the man may have a problem. And what I mean by that is there have been situations where people have actually gotten married and someone had deformities or was actually not able even to perform.
And also, I just had a question in my head. It was just like, not consummated. So, isn't there a rule that you have to consummate your marriage within a certain time, or is it just by choice you don't?
Well, you're supposed to obviously consummate the marriage. That's really what the walima is all about. If you look at the sunnah, once the marriage was consummated, that's when they had the celebration. But now things happen.
Wait, that's what a walima is. That's what. No.
Yeah, the walima is according to the sunnah, happens after the marriage is consummated. I know we don't do it like that in Dr. Phillips, okay? I'm with you. But I'm telling you from the sunnah, according to the Tabi'in and the Tabi'in, in Islam, in the days of the righteous predecessors, people got married and then they had the party. Now, what can happen? If you get married and a woman is menstruating, can you consummate the marriage?
No.
I went to bed at 4:55 this morning and still didn't. I actually got back up. Can you? No. But you may still have the walima, but ideally what you are celebrating is we've consummated the marriage. So wise people with hikmah, will actually plan their wedding around their typical, knowing when their menstrual cycle is. But then if you have a stressful wedding, that might affect your menstrual cycle. Weddings shouldn't be stressful, folks. This is about love. But sometimes the people that make it stressful are those unjust people that you're going to consult with later. Because you're trying to please them instead of Allah. These verses talking about fearing Allah when it comes to marriage. So many people fear their parents. Because, well, I don't know, you know, he's not Pakistani. He's not this. She's not this. Somebody, yes, brother?
You confuse me now. You says marriage about love, but a lot of places that you don't even see each other for the first night.
But that's cultural, brother. You're looking at that from a cultural standpoint. He's trying to teach us what marriage is supposed to be. It's not what's happening out there, but it is what's supposed to be.
Did Allah say in the Quran that He places love?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Do we believe the Quran?
Yes.
Okay. I can't argue with Allah. I'm looking for love. Let me tell you something. When I got married, I was looking for love. That's why I wanted to get married. I remember telling my parents, I'm going to find somebody to love me. I wanted to be loved. I wanted a love that doesn't compare to any other kind of love. Did anybody in here want to get married for something else? Maybe it was money. She had a fat bank account. Allahu Alam.
Well, I definitely wasn't that one.
What do you say? I was poor.
No, me. You didn't marry me for a fat bank account.
Alhamdulillah. Are we all together on this? Because there's a lot to cover here, and we've covered very little today. But do you see how important this is? Because I see this violated all the time. And even our thinking, we can tell by some of the things that are being said that we are in a dichotomous sort of mind trap with what's going on out there, what the world says, what our culture says, and then what Allah says. And what we always want to do is come back to Allah and His Messenger. At the end of the day, when we face Allah, this is what we want to have done if we're in a marriage. We want to look for reconciliation. We want to be equitable. We want to always give our wife what we have. And by the way, that verse is found in Surah 33 and 49 about the unconsummated marriage. If you want to look that up, I did not put that one in here. I think I decided that was
An exception.
an exception. Yeah. The difference in economic position between the genders makes the man's rights and liabilities greater. So when you have rights, you have what? Responsibilities or liabilities. You see, I see a lot of people running around talking about their rights. And I always look at them and say, well, tell me what is the responsibility that comes with that? And I do my Columbo face.
I like Colombo.
Yeah, I do too. So, makes the man's rights and liabilities greater than the woman's. Surah 434 refers to the duty of the man to maintain the woman. Men are the maintainers of women. And to a certain difference in nature between genders. Subject to this, both genders are on terms of the equality in law, and in certain matters, the weaker sex is entitled to special protection. Look, I mean, I know that some feminists in the group have trouble with some of these words.
I don't.
But you are in a vulnerable position. If weaker doesn't work for you, think of yourself as vulnerable. If you are pregnant, you are vulnerable. And if you don't believe it, go try to get a job when you're pregnant. I don't think people are jumping up at the bits to sign you up. Do you see it, folks? So weaker, vulnerable, I don't mean weaker spiritually. Okay?
Bodily.
Next verse, Surah 2, verse 229. A divorce is only permissible twice. After that, the parties should either hold together on equitable terms or separate with
Kindness.
I really should have highlighted that, bolded that, and underlined that.
Caps.
And put it in all caps. It is not lawful for you, men, to take back any of your gifts from your wives except when both parties fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by law.
What do you mean by limits?
I'm going to explain it. Everything that I put up here, what do? I break it down for you. If I don't, let me know, and I will, okay? But if I start breaking it down here, what happens is I think it gets a little discombobulated. So if I don't, make sure I do okay.
Well,
I'm trying to figure out. If ye judges do indeed fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah, there is no blame on either of them if she gives something for her freedom. These are the limits ordained by Allah, so do not transgress them. If any do transgress the limits ordained by Allah, such persons wrong themselves as well as others. It's like a double sin, folks. You're wronging yourself and you're wronging somebody else. Where divorce for mutual incompatibility is allowed, there is danger that the parties might act hastily, then repent and again wish to separate. To prevent such capricious action repeatedly, a limit is prescribed. 2 divorces with a reconciliation between are allowed. After that, the parties must definitely make up their minds, either to dissolve the union permanently or to live honorable lives together in mutual love and forbearance, to hold together, that you saw in the verse, on equitable terms. Neither party worrying the other, nor grumbling, nor even
Typo there?
I got a typo there. It's avoiding the duties and responsibilities of a marriage. I don't know what happened there. It was... If separation is inevitable, the parties should not throw mud at each other, but recognize what is right and honorable on a consideration of all the circumstances. In any case, a man is not allowed to ask back for any gifts or property he may have given to the wife. This is for the protection of the economically weaker gender, lest that protective provision itself work against the woman's freedom. An exception is made in the case, which I will also explain. Everybody with me so far? Okay. I know for some of you this is probably boring. How many people see the need to understand this? How many people have been taught this before? Raise your hand. You actually really understand this from the Quran? Raise your hand. I really need to know. Okay, so mommy does. Okay, from the one brother, alhamdulillah. I'm sorry you have to be subjected to it then again.
Halfway.
All right. All other prohibitions and limits prescribed here are in the interest of good and honorable lives for both sides. Equitable is the word. And in the interest of a clean and honorable social life. You know, the mudslinging in the community is just horrible. You know, for years, when I don't agree with somebody, I'm all of a sudden, I'm not a really man. I'm a fake. That's what has come back to me anyway. And this has been going on for years. Mason will testify that when I was in Rocky Mountain, North Carolina, I took a stance against a number of abusive men. I threw one of them out of my yard and said, I don't even want to be seen with you because you're a liability to my faith. And all of a sudden, I wasn't a really man. Just because I obeyed the Quran. The Quran says that if I ask you to leave my house, what are you supposed to do? Leave. And I even used the verse from the Quran. I said, brother, look, here's the verse. And I'm asking you as politely as I can. Of course, some people don't think you can ask somebody to leave politely. But I was very polite. I said, I don't want you to be seen in my yard. I don't want my wife. I don't want you to be near my wife or my children. And I have this right. And I have a responsibility to show you that I have this right. And then this man that had beat his wife, thrown her out naked, all kinds of things, had been to Hajj at least 4 times.
He needs to go there every month.
Well, I don't think it would actually have done him any good. So, all of the prohibitions and limits prescribed here are in the interest of good and honorable lives for both sides and in the interest of a clean and honorable social life, without public or private scandals. I see this all the time in communities where the family with the most money gets to paint the story the way that it looks good for them. And the other person is the bad person. And all I'm going to say to you is, fear Allah. Because you can do it on this earth, but Allah knows what happened. But I'm just telling you what I've seen. The one that has the biggest amount of money. And I've also seen this. That when certain spouses give a certain amount of money to certain masajids, I probably shouldn't have the camera on. Give a certain amount of money, all of a sudden they are, you can leave it on, I don't care. I'm just speaking the truth. Allah is my protector. They all of a sudden have a $200, what is it called in Monopoly? Get out of jail free card? Yeah. If there is any fear that in safeguarding her economic rights, or her very freedom of person may suffer, the husband refusing the dissolution of marriage and perhaps treating her with cruelty, then in such exceptional cases it is permissible to give some marital consideration to the husband. But the need and equity of this should be submitted to the judgment of impartial judges. And I got to just tell you straight out, I haven't met many impartial judges, even in the legal system.
What does it mean to be impartial?
It means that you aren't biased, that you don't say, for example, take the side of this person or that person because you like them. You totally look at what is, and this is what the Quran says to do about this. It's almost as if you're removed emotionally from those people. And that is properly constituted courts. Now, let me tell you what really, really bugs me, if I may. We have imams that if you go to, they will say, well, I can't issue a divorce Islamically. So you're stuck. But they sure can't marry you to somebody else when you ain't got a legal divorce. They don't have a problem with that. Hook you up. Oh, well, you know, they just are a convert and their husband. No, I'm talking about situations where the person is a Muslim, married to a Muslim. I don't know whether they got talaq or no talaq. All I know is they're not divorced, period. And an imam is marrying them. I don't go to those weddings. I was invited. I will not be seen there because I fear Allah. And I said something to an imam one time, and he said, well, we're trying to prevent them from committing zina. Well, you should have done that before. And I beg you folks, if I'm wrong, please teach me.
What is in a view?
Adultery or fornication, sex.
Outside of marriage.
Yeah. Now, this particular divorce that I was just explaining, and I'm going to go over this again with you where I actually break it down in this sort of like 5 kind of divorces. But I'm going to go through each verse with you before I get there. So you might want to make notes in these classes. Because I want you to see the verses in the Quran. I want you to have these verses when your best friend is going through this and show it to them. This one is called Kula. In Surah 2, verse 230. So if a husband divorces his wife irrevocably, now what does that mean? Irrevocably.
3 times.
That means